This tutorial is to teach you how A, to use Insight Maker, and B, how to do causal diagrams within Insight Maker. Causal diagrams are one of the main elements of system thinking, one of the main tools of system thinking, and they enable you to define relationship or causality between different variables in your system. Insight Maker, it's a free tool. You don't have to pay. You just need to register. And once you register and you logged in, you will see this screen. And the first thing that you want to do is actually create new insight. So you're creating a new insight. It will take a little bit of time, and then you'll see the default interface, which is an example, and it's full with data. So the first thing that you want to do is to clear the canvas, so you can work on that. Click me to clear the yellow button. It's clear. We are ready to go. So before we start, let's have a 1 minute of discussion what we are going to do here. What we are going to do is to take a classical example of purchasing department that is being requested to do a lot of contract, and due to their dependency on HR and legal to do their work, they are suffering for bad perception, and they are providing bad service to the department that requests. So in order to do that, we need to A, find out who are all the variables that we want to capture, and B, what is the causality between all of those variables. We'll start with save. And save will just enable the tool to save it automatically for us. So we know we're going to deal with purchasing, so special sourcing and purchasing department and problem. You can do it publicly or privately. Publicly, everyone can see it. Privately, just you. You can give a tag, you can write a description, and then you're going to save it. And that ensure you now that the tool will automatically save everything that you are doing. So the first thing is to think what are the primitives or what are the variables that we want to add. So as we mentioned, we're talking about SSMP or procurement. So obviously we have a procurement here. We are talking about their ability to process requests from other departments. So we are not going to put all the department here. We are just going to use marketing as an example. Marketing is extremely demanding partner that is working with a lot of external vendors and requests a lot of work from SSMP. So we have marketing, we have SSMP, we have the vendors that are requesting or actually cause SSMP to be involved in the process. And as we briefly mentioned before, we are going to have HR and legal as other two departments that are involved in the process of vetting whether the contract is okay or it needs some modification. So there are two ways to add primitives. You can go to the toolset in the beginning, in the top of the canvas, and just do add primitive and do add variable, and it will create new variable for you. Then you have to double click it, and you can change it to vendors, enter, you're okay. So this is the less, now why to be negative, this is the less convenient way to do it. The more convenient way to do it is simply to control and then right click and then create variable. You see the variable is created where you've done it. You don't have to double click it. And all you have to do in this scenario is going to be marketing. And here we have marketing. Now we are going to add SSMP. So control, right click, create variable SS and P, enter, right click, create variable, a friend from HR, right click, create variable, legal, and we are ready. You can take everything, and just want to take it a little bit up so we have room. Okay, great. So before we're starting to do relationship between them, I'm going to do a little bit of homework or a little bit of housekeeping, and I'm going to add here on the left several visuals that we are going to use throughout the work. And in order to do that, I'm going to do control and then right click and then create a picture. It is here. We see a picture, right click again, control and right click again, primitive pictures, then built-in images. Then the first one that we are going to choose is this icon that is going to stand for balancing loop. We'll see in a second that between each and every element is going to be a loop of causality. And this loop of causality might have two different types. One is a balancing loop. It means that the causality causes a balance. Nothing is going to go in exponential, negative, or positive way. And the other one is reinforcing loop. And reinforcing loop can be positive. They are reinforcing themselves all the time in a positive way, or they can be negative. They are reinforcing them all the time, but they are creating negative impact on the system. So in order to depict both the negative and the positive reinforcing loop, I'm going to go back to create a picture and right click, primitive, pictures, built-in, positive, right click, create picture, control again, control and right click, it's all the time, primitive pictures, built-in, use on negative. Now I know that we are going to deal here with delays, and I want to depict visually delays as well. So for that purpose, I'm going to add another picture. Primitive, built-in, there is a watch or clock or something. Oh, here it is. Grab it, minimize it. Superb. Second step is the line that will depict causality can be a negative or a positive. It could be a positive impact or a negative impact. So we are going to control and right click, and this time create text. I'm going to do minus, and there are two ways. You see it's underlined, so there are two ways to fix it. One of them is to go to style here and just remove the underline, and again control, right click, create text, plus, it's going to be the same irritating underline, but we are not going to give up. We're going to fix it in a different way this time. Control and right click, easier, underline, and here we go. So now we are ready. So let's start to understand what is the causality here. So in order to draw a line, or in order to create relationship or causal links between variable in the system, we need to go to the top tools and switch from flows into links. Once we do that, then we will hover on top of any variable we see a link. And in order to create a relationship, we just need to drag the link and drop it, and we have a line. Now we can change the line by doing Shift and click, and then grab the handle and move it in that direction. So vendors has causal impact on marketing, or cause marketing to do some work on their behalf. Marketing will cause SSMP work, and I did the right click and I'm moving it. SSMP will cause work to HR anytime that the contract required people to be on site, and SSMP are going to require work from legal every time that they need to review a contract. Just make it easier. Now, HR obviously, once they're done, they're going to create some causality on SSMP by or giving them instructions to change stuff in the contract and renegotiate with the vendor, or to just go and execute the contract. And the same will be on legal. Once legal is done, they're going to they will cause SSMP work, or they will impact SSMP. Think more or less the same thing. Here it is. We have the loops. Don't like it too much, so yeah, like if you want to change it, just disattach it and attach it, and usually it will automatically find a better place. Yeah. And obviously the same thing is going to happen between SSMP and marketing. When SSMP got thumbs up from HR and legal, they can go finish the negotiation and let marketing know that they can start working with the vendor, which means they have a impact, or they will cause marketing to do something. We know that there is line between marketing and vendors, but since we're just trying to focus on SSMP and everything that is related to SSMP in the context of contracts, we are not going to do this line. We're just going to depict this line as something that generates or start the process or influence the process. So we have all the lines, we understand all the directions, and we know it's pretty simple so far, I hope. Now we need to start to realize, is the causality line is positive or negative? And in order to do that, we need to think a little bit, or more than a little bit. So let's start with SSMP and legal. This is a process everyone knows. So SSMP are going to send contracts for legal to review. And actually, in reality, what's going to be here is we are going to have a very nice and long queue that is going to get all the requests. So I'm going to change it a little bit and remove the underline. Remove the underline. We're going to have a queue. Just I want to make sure that everyone understands it. So I'm adding a queue here, and this queue is going to grow as a result of all the requests that come in here. By the way, this queue is going to be increased by other requests that coming from other departments, but since it's outside of the scope of what we are modeling, we're not going to have it here. But the queue is growing, and obviously as you're adding more data to the queue, you have a negative impact or negative you're causing negative impact on legal. So it goes, it's negative. You see the line is going to be extremely irritating. So you have to go back up here and switch to flows. Now we won't have any lines and we can easily do cut and paste. So legal, they are going to process stuff on the queue. So if they're going to process stuff on the queue, we know for sure that it's going to be a delay between the time that legal gets something and the reply back to SSMP. Here's our delay depiction. Going to put it here. It's a delay. And obviously, since it's a delay, it's going to negatively impact SSMP because it's going to create negative perception of marketing on SSMP performance. It's actually going to impact negatively SSMP performance per se. So we are going to, again, Control-C, Control-V, take the -1, put it here. And this is a loop, as you can see. This is a loop, and if both sides of the loop are negative, we know that there is a reinforcing loop here, and this is going to be a negative reinforcing loop. More work, takes more time, impacting them, worse, more work, more, it's going to go forever. So this is a negative reinforcing loop, and voila, it's here. So this is the relationship or the causality between SSMP and legal. Not so good. There are other contributors to the queue, but they're outside of this scope, but we know it. The same relationship is going to happen with HR, exactly the same. So SSMP is going to request HR to review stuff. It's going to be queue here. The queue is going to cause the request to take time. So it's going to be a delay here, which means that we are going to have a negative impact here, and we are going to have a negative impact here, and obviously it's going to be a negative reinforcing loop. So let's look at that loop. Marketing are going to send more and more requests to SSMP. There's probably a queue here as well. But let's say there is no queue. Let's say SSMP is adequate to work with the number of requests they are getting. So SSMP get the request and over to here, waiting. There is a discrepancy of time here. The impact of marketing on SSMP in this particular example is not going to be positive as well, regretfully. And don't forget that there are other departments that adding more load. So SSMP will get it. Let's say that they are extremely efficient in processing it. Behind the scenes, there is delay, and there is a delay, which takes time to reply back. And this time actually cause a negative impact on the marketing, because the time that it takes, it's a delay up until they can actually start to use the vendors. Not good for them. And obviously this sending, waiting, not happy, sending more, not happy, sending more is a classical negative reinforcing loop situation here, as we all know, is not good at all. So this is a simple causality loop that simple causal diagram that shows you relationship between four different departments and how it impact actually SSMP. We said that we want to deal with SSMP perceptions, so let's complicate it a little bit more by adding a variable and call it SSNP. We can do perception, we can do net promoter score, it doesn't matter, something that we can measure, and put it here. So as we know already from this negative and this negative, HR, the time that it takes HR to process and the time that it takes legal to process actually create negative impact on SSNP perception. It would take down the SSNP net promoter score. So first of all, we have to click links again, otherwise we can't create lines. And here's the first one. Shift and click and an attempt to fix. Yeah, try to shift and click here and take it a little bit like that, so might have more space. Yeah. And I don't need touch. I just don't want to. I'm just touching it because I don't want the line to go over the queue. And as we already defined, oops, you see the line, the error. I'm going to switch back to flows, otherwise it would drive me nuts. So Control C, Control VV, because they have a negative impact, and they have a negative impact. And when your perception going down, it actually makes you go back to links because I want to draw a line, unhappy, which means that it has a negative impact on SSNP. You know, if everything was plus, it was a completely different scenario, but it's not. Back to flows. So I'm taking minus and Control C and Control V, or I say Control V, here's a minus. Here you go. And we actually added 2 more negative loops. This is 1 and this is 2. So I'm going to take good Control C, Control V. Here's one for you, and here is one here. Let's say that we want to see the picture in more correct light. We're going to add another variable. This time we call it IT, which is another department that likes to bombard SNP with requests. We want back the links. We want to draw a line here. And we want to draw a line here. I'm doing it intentionally to show you what happens when you are not curving the lines. It's very hard to understand. There's not a place where to put the type of loop, but we can easily fix it by shift and click, and shift and click. Do you want this one? And shift and shift and click, and that will be the same nightmare. I have links again, so flows, transaction, okay, Control C, VV, didn't work out, flows, Control C, VV, one here, and another happiness here. Pretty ugly picture. You know, if you want to take it one step further, you can create another variable and you can call it other departments. And if you're doing that, just an advice is change the field to something different, so people understand that it's not part of it, and change the lines to dash lines so people understand that it's not actually part of causal diagram, it's just trying to depict the point. Then back to link, then you can create this link Shift and click, and let's put it nicely here. And this time I just want to change the line to be solid line, and I want to change it to be much more like less color, so people understand it's just a depiction. So what we see here is those will create a work or load on those guys, and those guys depends on those two, and this dependency is actually harm their perception, it harm them, and we have like a very nice negative loop that almost impacts everyone in the system. And let's try to understand the solution. So the first solution that a classical organization will put in place is going to be the guy who runs SSMP doesn't know what he's doing, or the people in SSMP are stupid and they don't know what they're doing. We need to replace them. They can replace them all day long. Nothing's going to help. The same problem is going to stay. We all know that. We all been there. That's not the solution. The second solution is very common as well, and that takes SSMP and break them and say, okay, let's put part of SSMP in marketing and part of SSMP in IT. Actually not going to help, because the problem is not here. The problem is actually with here. So let's pick where's the problem by doing this nice trick. I want it to be red, and I want the text to be white. Okay, so the problem is actually in the legal and the HR. And if you really want to solve the problem, you have to understand that the queue and the delay, which is the heart of the problem, is actually a symptom. It's a symptom for another problem that's called risk averse. So the risk averse that the management decided, of this company decided, and legal and HR just executed, cause the problem. Because they are so risk averse, they are reviewing each and every contract, and they are very picky about each and every line that they believe that put the company in risk. And that's create huge delays here and huge delays here, and everything else suffer from that. So the solution is a little bit complex, because the solution comes with or reducing the risk averse. Let's say you don't want to take this approach, or by offloading the validation, whether it's a risk or not a risk, from legal and HR to marketing, to IT, and to all the other businesses that are going to request work for SSMP. If we will do that, if HR and legal will write down what is a must not have in a contract, and those guys will have it, they can negotiate with the vendor even before SSMP see the contract. And if they believe that there is no issue with the contract, the company needs to trust them to execute the contract, or tell SSMP to execute the contract. You know, SSMP can be another pair of eyes. They can also look at the contract and validate it. You're creating a little bit more load on SSMP. If you want to reduce it completely, you need to trust those three. But anyway, trusting those three and let those guys to verify reduce significantly the load from here, and the load from legal and the load from HR. And it means that it's going to ease and probably turn those two loops into balancing loops. There will be some balance here between the need to keep risk and not, because if marketing, IT, and other departments will believe there is a risk, they will move it to SSMP. If SSMP believe that there's a risk, they will move it to legal. So there will be some balancing here, but not and negative reinforcing loop. And I'm willing to bet that once this will move from negative into balancing, and this will be removed from negative into balancing. In the beginning, those two will be replaced with positive reinforcing loop, but after a while they will change into balancing as well. And these two will removed and going to be replaced with more balancing approach. So this is much more healthier system, and the only way that we actually managed to do it is by taking very clear instruction from legal and HR and ask department that actually interact with vendors to do the first vetting, and if they believe there is a problem, ask SSMP to do the second vetting, and to move to those two just really problematic or high risk issues. But this is a change and a trust and a different way of thinking, and this going back to the decision makers that make the decision to set up the system that way. What you can see pretty easy here in working that way, that it doesn't really a SSMP problem, and it doesn't really illegal on HR problem. There's something in the way that the system was set up that create the problem. In order to resolve the problem, we have to fix the system, and that's more a management decision than anything else. I hope that it was helpful. I know it takes time, and I'm sorry that it takes so much time, but I want to go in very details so you can understand the logic behind causal loop. You can see the value of them, and you can see also how it's easy to use them within the tool. You don't have to save, it's auto-saved. That's all. Thanks.